Hello, comrades. We have some interesting show of the millennium for you today. We're going to have a debate between two of mankind's greatest economic titans. Their economic views contrast like day and night. We have a Nobel laureate in economics, author, professor, and the most famous proponent of Keynesian economics. He believes in big government spending and a supporter of government intervention. He advocates for more inflation, and that inflation isn't a bad thing. Dr. Paul Krugman versus businessman and author who predicted the 2008 crash with great details. Millionaire chief executive of Euro-Pacific Capital and a popular gold proponent. He believes in a tiny government, getting rid of Department of Education, Department of Energy, the Environmental Protection Agency, and most of the government offices. He also would dare to kill Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and Obamacare, which help millions of people. He calls Social Security, which is the most successful government program, a Ponzi scheme. Peter Schiff. Let's start with Dr. Paul Krugman. What's your take on our economic system, and how should we approach it?
The only player out there who can get this economy moving is the government. So now is the time for the government to go ahead and borrow, spend, get this economy moving, and then be responsible, then pull back, but only after we've got this thing going. It's even self-defeating in pure budget terms. The government pulls back, the economy will shrink further, tax revenues will fall. This is not the time for austerity.
Well, first of all, I got bad news for the middle class. If you want all this government, then you have to pay for it. And the truth is, if we don't slash government spending, then we have to raise taxes on the middle class. But, the problem is there's no guarantee that the higher taxes will go to reduce the deficit. The government might just spend it. And that's going to be the problem, is we're growing government instead of addressing the real problem, which is spending. And, President Obama says he wants to protect the middle class from higher taxes. Well, the only way to do that is to protect them from bigger government, because the middle class has to pay for big government. And right now, because we're running these huge deficits, the Federal Reserve creates all kinds of inflation to monetize those deficits, and that's a tax on average Americans who see the price of food go up, the price of gasoline go up. Prices are rising because of big government and the inflation that is used to finance it.
Well, there's certain things, you can't leave the government out of monetary policy. If you try to think, we're going to just let it set itself, it doesn't happen. The government is actually always, the Federal Reserve, the central bank, is always going to be in the business of managing monetary policy. If you think that you can avoid that, you're living in the world as it was 150 years ago, right? We have an economy in which money is not just green pieces of paper with faces of dead presidents on them. Money is the result of the financial system. It includes a variety of assets. We're not even quite sure where the line between money and non-money is. It's kind of a continuum. And look, history tells us that, in fact, a completely unmanaged economy is subject to extreme volatility, subject to extreme downturns. I know there's this legend that people like, probably you have, that the Great Depression was somehow caused by the government, caused by the Federal Reserve, but it's not true. The reality is that was a market economy run amok, which happens.
You got to reread your history
over the past couple of centuries. You do need, I'm a believer in the market economy. I'm a believer in capitalism.
No.
I want the market economy to be left as free as it can be, but there are limits. You do need the government to step in to stabilize. Depressions are a bad thing for capitalism, and it's the role of the government to make sure that they don't happen, or if they do happen, that they don't last too long.
You're assuming that the government can solve these problems. They can't. They can't micromanage this economy. It didn't work in the 1930s. The Politburo couldn't micromanage the Russian economy. We need to put our faith in the free market, in capitalism, in market forces. We can't let these cronies try to set prices, fix prices, decide which companies fail, which companies don't. This is going to be a disaster, much bigger than the one they're trying to fight.
Yeah, that's another one of those things that is just amazing that people would be believing that. I mean, you think that the people who talk like this are on the side of the little guy and against the banks, but they're not. They're actually supporting a policy that rich people that billionaires have always liked. The reason that that gold bugism survives in this modern world is because it's a doctrine that has always been subsidized heavily by billionaires who like the idea that nobody can print money and nobody can inflate away any of their assets, even if a little bit of inflation is what it takes to rescue the nation from mass unemployment. John Maynard Keynes, again, he called the notion of gold in the economy a barbarous relic. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of problems with our country, but why should this metal, this not especially useful metal, be the gold standard of value? What is he, crazy? We have an economic problem. It needs to be managed. It needs to be managed through human intelligence, not by appealing to something that may have made sense back in the 1st century BC.
I mean, what has Paul Krugman spoken? Gold is used not only in jewelry and it's used decoratively, but it's used in electronics. There's gold in cell phones. It's used in dentistry. There's all sorts of practical uses for gold. Gold has a value unique to itself, not just that it has a value as money. It has a lot of other properties that made it money. The people made gold money. Governments didn't decree that gold was money. Gold won the free market battle for the commodity that was best suited to serve as money. But gold never would have been money had it not been desired for itself. It is the fiat currencies, and Bitcoin have no intrinsic value. But Bitcoin's got going for it is that there's some limit to the supply. There's no limit to the supply of dollars. They're going to keep running them off the presses until nobody wants them.
If we discovered that space aliens were planning to attack, and we needed a massive buildup to counter the space alien threat, and really inflation and budget deficits took secondary place to that, this slump would be over in 18 months. There was a Twilight Zone episode like this in which scientists fake an alien threat in order to achieve world peace. Well, this time we don't need it. We need it in order to get some fiscal stimulus.
Okay, I mean, the whole thing, this is a crazy comment by Paul Krugman. I don't know, maybe Krugman, living out there in the Caribbean, maybe he's completely, oblivious. I mean, what has Paul Krugman spoken?
You can tell all the jokes you want, but I'm going to be laughing all the way to the bank. I've made a lot more money in my personal account over the years than you've made in your personal account. I trade for myself, too. I eat my own cooking, right? How much money did you make shorting the subprime? Were you short? I was.